Hey everybody, it's Paul Stevens here from iGo Sales and Marketing, and today we've got another tutorial. Today we are going to do rescheduling calls. So we're going to set up a time-saving workflow that most sales reps are going to like. So typically what happens, you call somebody, whether it's a cold call or you're reconnecting with somebody after a while, you'll call them and they'll say, you know what, like now's not a good time, call me next week, okay? So you do get a brief call in, but it's not really a substantial call, or you do get a call in, but they say, you know, right now we're not really ready for moving forward. Give us a call back in a couple weeks, or give us a call back next quarter or next month. This kind of stuff happens all the time. So typically what you have to do is you have to go and then you have to complete the call that you just had, and then you have to create another planned call for 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 2 weeks from now, or whatever. Okay, so what I have set up is a workflow here, and we're going to go through a tutorial today where you can, when you complete the call, automatically create the next call at the scheduled time, and it's a big time saver, leveraging Workflow and SuiteCRM. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, just going to move myself out of the way here. Okay, so couple things we're going to need to get started. Okay, we're going to need to add a couple fields in SuiteCRM. Ooh, I think I got the wrong one opened here. Here we go. We are going to need to add a couple of fields. Okay, but before we do that, I'm going to show you how this looks and sort of what it does. Okay, so I've got it set up in SuiteCRM 7, and we're going to go through the process of setting this up in SuiteCRM 8. They should be relatively similar, but I'll show you how this works. So here's a list of calls I have here. So I'm going to pick one that's in a planned stage. Okay, so I'll pick this one. Okay, so I'm going to open up this call. A couple other things that I want to note here is that this one doesn't have any contacts in it. This is just my demo here. So let me just add a contact to it. I figured who a contact is from this account. And actually that's one thing I would love to figure out how to do is an easier way to look up contacts to add to a call by the company instead of by the name. That would make way more sense. But anyway, that's a problem for another day. Okay, let's see, who are the contacts? So Colleen Crystal is here. Okay, so I'm going to add her. Okay, there we go. I just wanted to make sure that we had somebody added to the call. Okay, the other thing that's important is make sure you don't have email invitees checked, because when you create the new call, you don't want it to default to emailing the invitees when you create the new call. Okay, so that's very important. So what I've done here is this field here is just for testing, so that when I built it, I could verify that this was actually happening. But you don't need to display this on the front end. This recall date time is just to help our workflow work better. But the field that we need is next callback date. Okay, so I've set this up to 1 week, 2 weeks, next month, next quarter, 6 months. Okay, and if you're familiar with drop downs, we're going to set it up as a drop down. We're going to make the value like 7, 14, 30, 120, 180, and then when we do our workflow, we're going to add those days to the current day in order to calculate when to create the next call for. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's say I'm gonna make this call for next month. Okay, so the workflow fires, and we'll go through all the details, but the workflow fires when the next callback date is populated and the call is either held or not held. So maybe you can't get a hold of the guy, but you want to usually you would do a reschedule, but maybe the guy canceled or something. Okay, and you want to record that it canceled, and then you want to create another call. But generally you would be having them as held. Okay, and then next month. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so now this workflow doesn't run on save, it runs in the scheduler. So actually it looks, I think it just ran. I have mine running every 2 minutes. I was going to put you on pause, but it being 11:12 a.m. right now, it's probably ran. So I'm going to go to my view calls here. And I'm just going to sort them by date created. And you can see my call here to Colleen Crystal was created for next month, 30 days from now, 06/16, 11:12 a.m., which is right now. And it's related to Colleen and related to the account. And I made the subject to be callback. Okay, you can get fancier with this. Like, for example, once you see how the workflow is done, if you wanted, I have the next call back here, but if you wanted the next call subject, you could do that and then make the workflow populate that in the next call. So anyway, I'm going to make it very simple, but you can, once you understand how it works, you can think about other ways that might help you in your calling process. So this is going to be a huge time saver. So basically, I've made the call. All I did was click when the next call is, and it automatically scheduled it for me and created the call, and I don't have to do anything. So that's, it's a huge time saver if you're doing this manually. Okay, so how do we do this? All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna move my SuiteCRM 7 version out of the way here, and we are gonna focus on it. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create that drop down of the next callback. Okay, and it's going to look like this. So in SuiteCRM 8, we are going to go to admin, and we're going to go to studio. And then we are going to go to calls. And again, if it's SuiteCRM 7, it's the same idea here. All this stuff is the same. We are going to add a field. Okay, and the field that we want to add is going to be called next callback. Okay, so, and it's going to be a drop down. So next callback, and if you press tab, it'll automatically populate the label for you. Okay, and then we're going to have to create the values here. So we are going to add a new drop-down list. Okay, and I always like to start drop-down lists with a blank. So make sure you have a blank there. So we are going to want like 7. So this, and the label for this is going to be like 1 week. And then probably we want 14 and 2 weeks. And then by the time you get to 3 weeks, it's like next month, right? So let's do a 30 next month. Okay, and then beyond that, we're talking like next quarter, right? Which is 120 days. And then, maybe 6 months. So what are we doing here? Well, yeah, 120 days. So we'll do 1 year, which is 365. Okay. And we'll add that in there. Okay, so now we have these options. You can add more options if you want, like, call me tomorrow, call me next week, call me in 2 weeks. Well, I got 2 weeks, but some of the common ones, whatever you run into. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Okay, and then what I always forget to do is don't forget to save it here, otherwise it won't actually be there. Okay, so like with any custom field, once we create the call, the next thing create the field, sorry, we have to add it to our layout. So I want to add this field to my edit view. Okay, so I'll probably put it somewhere here looks good, but you can put it wherever it makes sense in your call layout. Okay, so there's my next callback. I'm going to put it right there. And then what I always like to do is when I'm doing edit view, I like to sync to detail view. In some cases, you might not want to do that, like where actually in this case, there's a field that we don't necessarily need to be in the edit view. Actually, we don't need to be in either field, but if you have fields that you don't want in the edit view, but just on the detail view, you wouldn't check this off. But in most cases, if you can keep them both exactly the same, it's a better user experience, and it's easier on you when you're adding custom fields because you just have to sync it and you just add it once. Okay, so I'm going to save that and deploy, and I'm just going to go check that it's there. So I'm going to go to calls here. Sorry, it's difficult sometimes switching between 7 and 8, getting used to where everything is. But okay, so let's just see that my field is there. And next callback, it is. Okay, so that worked out good. So the next thing that we're going to need here is we're going to need like a placeholder field. So when we get into the workflow, you'll understand a little bit better. But when we do a calculated field, it calculates a field in the existing record. Okay, it doesn't calculate a field for the next record we're trying to create. So we kind of have to play a little trick here. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a field. It doesn't need to be on the front end, but it needs to be there so that the workflow can calculate out the value for it, and then when we create the new record, it just copies it over. Okay, so anyway, it'll make more sense when we get into the workflow. But we need something like next call or recall date and time. Okay, and we want that to be a date and time field. Okay, because a recall date has both a date and a time. Okay, so we're going to go back to Studio. We're still in calls here. I'm going to go just kind of click back to calls. And what I'm going to do here is go to fields again, and we're going to add another field, and this one we want to be a date and time, and we called it recall date time. Okay, so I'm just going to keep these consistent with my documentation here. Recall date time. Okay, and remember in the field names you can't have any spaces, so that's why all the underscores. Okay, and when you save a custom field, it automatically puts the underscore C at the end, even though you may not see it here. Okay, so we got a date time field, recall date time, and we are just going to save that. Okay, so in this case we do not need to enter this in the edit view or the detail view, so we don't need to add it to the front end because it's just kind of there to help us out. Okay, all right, so now that we've got those two fields created, we are going to create the workflow. Okay, so a couple things before we get started. The workflow we want to run in the scheduler, and I want to explain why. Okay, so in the example that I just gave, when you create a new call, okay, from an existing call, it's going to copy over like the relationships to the contact or the lead or whoever's like associated with it. Okay, so if I do that on save and it's an existing call that already exists, that will work probably fine. Okay, but what's going to happen is if I create like a new call log, like I just called somebody, maybe it was in the system, and at the same time I want to create a reschedule, well, the order that this stuff runs in, okay, like the relationships to the call get created after the call. Okay, and it makes sense because you can't like create contacts that are related to a call that doesn't exist yet. Okay, so what happens here, it runs through the save process, it creates the call, then it creates the relationships from the contacts to that call, right? So we can't really do the stuff that we want to do here by copying that stuff over to the new call record because it doesn't exist yet, if that makes sense. So what we want to do is run this in the scheduler. So when it runs in the scheduler, the call that you just entered is completed and the relationships are created right? And then in the scheduler a couple minutes later, it runs and does what it needs to do. Okay, so that way we ensure it happens after all the relationships to the call are created. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. But let's get into doing a workflow here. So I'm going to go to Workflow now. And SuiteCRM 8, I have to go to admin. It's not in the menu. And go to Workflow Manager. Okay, so I'm going to create a new workflow here. So I'll go create workflow. And we're going to call this follow up call creation. Okay, and the workflow module we want is calls. And again, like I said, we want to run this in the scheduler. Okay, we run it on all records because 99% of the time probably it's going to be modified records because you're going to be calling plan calls, but sometimes you're going to be creating a new record at the same time as you want to create a follow-up call. So our choice here is to either do two different workflows or just do it on all records. Okay, so and again, I don't know if you have hundreds of thousands of call records, and you're considering sort of database, and processing time, you may want to split that into two workflows, and it'll make a much smaller job. But anyway, this will work. Okay, and we don't want repeated runs. Okay, so once the call has been rescheduled to be a recall, we don't want more recalls to get created. Okay, so that's important, only once. So the conditions that we are going to have, okay, so here in the call notes, and I'm going to post a blog about this on my website and have some of the tutorial details there that will be helpful for you, like the screenshots and that kind of stuff. So the first thing is we want the next callback not equal to blank. So that means we filled in that callback date, which means that we want a call scheduled. And we want the status of the call to be like not open. It has to be closed. It's got to be held or not held. Okay, so let's set that up. So we're gonna do calls. We are gonna go recall. No, sorry, not recall date and time. What did we call it? Next callback date. Not equal to blank, and we want the status equal to one of, or not equal to, or sorry, no, yes, equal to. It's equal to held or not held. Okay, and I multi-selected there by just holding down the control key. Okay, so that is the conditions. So the next thing we're going to want to do is add actions. So when these conditions are true, we're going to want to add an action. Okay, so the actions part. So again, in the order that we want to do this, we want to make sure we do the calculation first, and then we want to create the new record second. And again, the reason for that is because we want the value of when the next call is to be calculated. Okay, so we are going to add an action here, and we're going to want to calculate a field. Okay, so if you have never done calculated fields before, good chance to review the documentation on it. It seems easy at first, but you know, like you forget like one colon or something and it doesn't work, and then you have to troubleshoot it, and it takes a while. So this one took me a few hours to get right. But, you know, now that I've got it right, you can all use it, okay? So the first thing we want to do is we need a parameter here, okay? And the parameter that we want to get is the next callback date, okay? And that's the field that we created that tells it how many days from now we want to create the next call, okay? So let's go back here, and we are going to make a parameter. And we want the next callback date, okay? Or it's not actually a date, it's a number. So we are going to add just the raw value. So if it's next week, it's going to be a 7, for example. Okay, so that variable is now called P0, right? So now comes the complex part. Okay, and we want to do a couple things here. So we're going to do the formula. So we want to calculate out the next, not the next callback, but the callback date time field that we created here. What did we call it? Recall date time. There it is. Okay, so we want to add a formula for that field. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are calculating out in the existing call the recall date and time. All right, so I already have this pre-done, and I'm going to put it on my blog for you, but I'll go through and explain as best I can what this does. So let me just, I'm going to see if I can do this in a way that makes sense here. Okay, so here's the formula, okay? So basically it's like formulas within a formula. Okay, so the first formula, okay, and I think maybe the best way to break this down is, okay, so I'm going to put it on multiple lines here. So the first one is add days, okay? And the first thing that's going to happen in add days, okay, is that it's going to need the value of add days to what? Okay, so that's this first value here. Okay. So inside of that, there is a value of this is just telling it what format it has to be in. So it's month, day, year, hour, minute, and then PM. Okay, that's super important. If you don't have the format right, it's not going to accept the value in the database. Okay, so let me just adjust my camera a little bit. The second thing is inside of this, I have another formula. I've got two formulas. One is subtract hours. Okay, so I think let's tab that in. Okay, so this is, oops, this is the subtract hours formula, okay? And again, same thing, subtract hours is saying we want it in this format, okay? But then I've got another formula in here, okay? Which is now, okay? And the reason for this is you kind of work backwards. So now is the server time, okay? And in my case, the server time happens to be 4 hours from now, okay? So I have to subtract 4 hours, okay, from the current time, which it gets from the server, in order to be now, okay, if that makes sense. Then the second part of, and this is really part of the add days one, okay, if this makes sense, we're getting the current date is kind of if it kind of works outward, that makes sense. So now is the current date and time. We're adding 4 hours to that, or subtracting 4 hours from that, which returns the time I want, which is actually right now, to the add days formula, which is then going to, after this colon here, add P0, which is the amount of time that is in our dropdown. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. If you review how the date time functions work in the calculator, this might make more sense. But if that seems really complicated to you, hopefully from that you understand that what I would do if I were you doing this the first time, I would make this 0 and see when it schedules the call for, and you'll know what the time difference is between yourself and your server time. Okay, in my case it's 4 hours. Okay, and if it happens to go the other way where the server is behind you, you can always add hours instead of subtract hours. Anyway, hope that makes sense. But if you are on Eastern Standard Time like me, then that's probably going to work for you. And I think my server's set to UTC time, which makes that all work out. Okay, so either way, you can copy that, you can paste it into yours, and you can just adjust the value for the time difference to make that work for you. So because it's kind of specific like that, if all your people are working in the same time zone, that will work just fine. If you have somebody working in a different time zone or multiple people in different time zones, this method's probably not going to work for you. I do have another solution for this, which is more involved if you have different people in different time zones. Okay, but this is the simplest one, and I know it doesn't seem that way right now. Okay, so we're gonna add the recall date. Okay, so once that's done, we're gonna get the value that we need. Okay, and then we're gonna add another action here. Okay, so now that this field is calculated, we're gonna create a new record. Okay, and we're gonna create another call. Okay, so hopefully you can see where this is going right now. And basically you just populate the fields. Okay, so the assigned to is going to be the assigned to. The contact is going to be the contact. The date created is going to be today, right? We'll leave that as now. The description, okay, so again, if you want, you can copy the description over from the current call report to the next call report, or you don't have to, or you can put in something manually if you want. Okay, so I'm going to just skip the description for now. The direction is, we're going to copy it from the direction. Okay, so you see what we're doing here. We're just making an exact copy. So the duration hours, we're going to put a value of 0. Okay, because so we're going to schedule these calls for 15 minutes. The duration minutes, we're going to make 15. Okay. We are going to parent type is important. We're going to need that. So that's if it's related to an account, for example, the parent type is the account. If it's related to a contact, the parent type is a contact. So we're just going to copy this over from the existing one. So parent type is parent type. And then the parent ID, like that it's related to, we are going to again copy that over. Okay, and then we're probably going to want a subject. did I do status? Status, for sure we want it to be planned, right? Because the new call we're creating is going to be planned. And then subject, we are going to want that to be callback. And I mean, you can get fancy. You can copy it just like we did here from the existing one. If you want to put another custom field in the call for, you know, next call subject, you can put that there and populate it that way. Anyway, this is good. Let me just double check I haven't forgot anything here. So again, on my blog, I'll have all this stuff. Okay, that makes sense. So the next thing we have to do is add the relationships. Okay, so you'll see a little button down here in the create record section, which is add relationships. Okay, so we want to add, if it happens to be an account related, we want to relate that to I don't have that one set up in here. Let's see. Okay, so the contact is going to get related to the contact, and the lead, if it happens to be a lead, we want to relate that to the related to ID, because it won't be a contact, it'll be related to a lead. Okay, and that should make that work out just fine. All right, I'm just going to double check that really quickly with the version that I already did. Make sure I didn't forget anything important here. Okay, so that works good. If you want, I don't think it's necessary to relate it back to the account the way I have in my other version, just because typically it's already going to be related to the account through the contact who's related to the account. So I think that'll work just fine. Okay, so I think we're good. We're ready to go at this point. I'm going to just save this, okay? And then we're going to test it. I just realized I forgot the most important field, the start date of the next call. Okay, so we're going to go back to our workflow here, and we are going to add in the start date equal to the field that we just calculated up here, which is recall date time. Okay, so let's save this, and I'm gonna put you on pause, and I'm gonna run it here again. Okay, so let's go back to our calls. Okay, and I'm gonna pick one again that is in a planned status. And I am going to edit it. And I'm going to make it held. And I'm going to make the next recall to be 2 weeks from now. And I am going to, make sure you uncheck this, okay? Save it. And let me put you on pause really quickly until this runs. Okay, so the job ran, and we can see in my workflow here, in the process audit here, it ran on this record, bad time we'll call back, the one that we just set up. So this was the call that we just made for AB Drivers Limited. And it was today. So, and we set it recall for 2 weeks. Okay, so if we go to our list of calls here, you'll see, and I sorted by date created, so you'll see the most recent callback is created for AB Drivers, and it's created for 2 weeks from now, 5/31, and it's 5/17 today. Okay, so that's how it works. There is one slight complication that I noticed just before I ran this. So in the workflow, let me just edit this again. So in the calculation, so if we look at in the list of calls here, let's go back. You'll see our format here is pretty much the same as SuiteCRM 7. Okay, so if I look at, I think I have it around here somewhere. Okay, if we look at our calls in SuiteCRM 7, you'll see that the dates have a capital AM and PM, okay, which is how I set up the format for the formula. But in SuiteCRM 8, they've got lowercase, okay? So what I did in the formula, so in the format here, so it's month, day, year, hours, minutes, and then I had a capital A there because it would make a capital AM or PM. Instead, I changed that to a lowercase a for SuiteCRM 8 because I noticed it does it that way. So I'm going to put both of those formulas on my blog, and please go there and check it out, and you'll get access to like screenshots and stuff that will help you out in addition to following the video. And again, I do this for a living. If you like my videos, they're helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you need help, please reach out to me, write in the comments below. I try to answer everybody. If you'd like to hire me, you can visit my website. Links are below. I can help you do SuiteCRM, web design, SEO, bring the whole thing together and build a online selling strategy for your company, which includes the integration of the CRM with your website and your digital marketing and everything else. That's kind of what I do. So thanks for watching. I hope it helped you.